Hi, I'm John Zidan. This is my co-host, Harry Kimes. Welcome to another edition of Retirement Matters. Well, today our discussion is going to be about a topic that I think is very, very important to a lot of people. And we're going to call it Get a Second Opinion. Why do you suppose that's important, Harry?
Well, I think, like anything else, you go to a doctor and he wants to suggest you have major surgery. You certainly want to make sure that he's made the right diagnosis, so you go get a second opinion. I think that applies in finances as well. We've accumulated our money for retirement. We want to protect it, take care of it, and making sure that we've got good advice makes sense. So, having a second opinion on the items that, the way that you handle your money certainly makes sense. But I guess my question is, if you don't have a lot of exposure to the financial community, how do you go about getting a second opinion? How would you do that?
Well, I think the first couple things what you have to do, number one, is you have to understand the different areas that we're dealing with. And one of the things that I try to do at retirement first, when a person comes in and they're coming to me, you want to get to the point, if you go to visit somebody, you're not going to someone that's just immediately trying to sell you something. So the first thing you want to do when you're going out and you're searching and you're trying to change some things because things aren't exactly working in your favor, you really want to look for somebody that is going to give you what I classify as education, give you a good schooling and said, my product's better than yours, this is better than this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Because in today's age, everybody has a product, everybody has something they want to sell. And so the first thing in education, the three things people should be concerned about if they're close to retirement or they're going to retire is number one, what happens if I live too long? Do I have that covered? Okay. What happens if I die too quick? Do I have all my affairs in order? If I die too quick, is my spouse, is my children going to be okay? And the most important, what if I don't die, too quick? And what if I don't live too long, but instead I get disabled and I'm still living and my spouse is still healthy? Now I've got a situation on my hands I didn't quite plan for. So the first thing we want to do in a second opinion, we're going to go over the areas that are very, very important. If I live too long, I die too quick, or I become disabled. Now, getting a second opinion involves a lot of different things that we need to do. And the first thing we need to do is we need to go over areas of things that we may have, okay? And what things could we be possibly thinking of, Harry, that we might have that we might want to get a second opinion on?
Well, if I put a checklist together that I would want to use to, compare financial advisors, I'd probably start out with something like maybe probate. What do I need to worry about in the area of probate?
Probate. The first thing you want to understand is that's a good one, because so many times we have all the time in the world until it ends like that. And one of the things you have to be careful with, and a lot of times the attorneys go to school to learn how to do probate. That's their job, they're good at it. But my thing is, what can we do to help people so that in the event someone dies, maybe we don't have 10 to 15 attorneys standing around in line waiting to help somebody. So it's important that you have to have attorneys there to help you with your estate, but you can do some due diligence. You can do some things that can protect you. And the first thing that I ask people to do is, if you have a checking account or you have a savings account or a CD or a mutual fund or a bond or a deed, you want to make sure that the assets are titled correctly. So that's number one. So on your checklist, take a list and write down every single thing you have, from your CD, your savings account, your checking account, your mutual funds, your 401k, your IRA, your life insurance. Make sure your house, your deed, make sure your car, every single thing is written on that list, number one.
Okay. Well, the other thing that certainly is getting a lot of press these days is the healthcare situation, and Medicare certainly comes to mind for those of us approaching retirement or approaching 65 or already 65. So there's certainly going to be questions around that, and I think that would be on the checklist as well.
Second thing I would say is your health insurance, Medicare, long-term care insurance, major medical, very important. And one of the biggest things people have to do is make sure they understand what they have. Because so many times, maybe the husband is older, and maybe the wife isn't as old as the husband. Mm-hmm. So he goes to retire. He doesn't really understand. He thinks his major medical might stay with him, but in reality, in a lot of cases, Harry, he would get the insurance, but she doesn't get the insurance. And now she's got to wait till she's 64 and a half to apply for Medicare, which means there's a little bit of a loophole in the middle between there where that could become very important. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to your human resource department of where you're working, and you want to say, in the event that I decide to retire, does my insurance stay with me for major medical? Okay, are you offering it? Number two, or does it end? Some places you don't have it anymore. Or do I have to go on COBRA? And COBRA is something that in most cases will last for 36 months. Maybe someone's close to retirement, and maybe they decide to switch jobs and think, I'll work here for a couple years. Very important to understand if they make a move like that, COBRA will cover them, for 36 months in some situations, which would be a divorce situation. But in most likelihood, COBRA is something that was put in place that's around 18 months. And then after 18 months, you have to find a new insurance company. So if you're not 64 and a half, and you decide to go to another job or you decide to retire, make sure the company's still going to give you the major medical and the wife is still going to get the major medical. Or is there going to be a loophole, basically between the age brackets, between maybe you're 64, close to 65, your wife's 57, 59. We see a lot of that these days. And so you want to ask the human resource department, do I keep my major medical, or are you going to offer me a Medicare supplement? And that's usually important, because if they offer him a Medicare supplement, what are they offering her? She's not ready for a Medicare supplement. So important, make sure you call the human resource department and find out your insurance options.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That brings me to another item on the checklist then, as we talk about health care. I read somewhere that about 50% of us will end up in a nursing home at some point in our life, and nursing homes aren't getting less expensive. If anything, they're going up every day. So I guess many of us could be thinking about the need for Medicaid, and there's a lot of questions about Medicaid, and a lot of these states are running out of money. So is Medicaid a viable option? What should we be looking at there?
Medicaid used to work a little bit different for people. And the idea with Medicaid was that if you needed assistance and you were still middle class or something, you could still protect some of your assets and still apply for Medicaid. Recently, there was a new law that came into effect. I believe it was 2007. It's called the Deficit Reduction Act, which kind of changed the playing field for Medicaid. And I don't want to get into a whole program on Medicaid, but I just want to give some people some basics. And the basics you're looking for in Medicaid is, number one, some of the basic rules that have changed. The first rule that changed when you're dealing with Medicaid used to be if you had IRAs for you or your spouse, that you could have your IRAs and your husband or you could apply for Medicaid. The new law basically says that qualified money, IRAs, 401ks, savings accounts, checking accounts, mutual funds, bonds, what have you, will be spent down for the person going into the facility to apply for Medicaid, which is about $1,500. Mm-hmm. The second area of concern, the spend down period has been changed from 36 months to 60 months. So that means if I apply for Medicaid, what I have to do is I have to make sure that my assets are not in my name for a period of up to 60 months from the date that I apply for the Medicaid application. The other big issue is if I'm single or I'm divorced or I'm a widow, maybe I fall and I slip on the ice. something happens to me and I have to go into the nursing home because maybe my family isn't in the same state, if I go in maybe for a short stay, 12 months or 18 months, that after 6 months of being into Medicaid, I'm going to have my heirs get some type of letter acknowledging that I have to put my house up for market, because once you've been under Medicaid for 6 months, Medicaid is going to basically say you got to put your house up if you want to continue to stay here, because there's really nothing there for widows, divorcees, or single people, because they don't have a husband and wife together. Because the rule still is, if you're married and you're a husband and wife and you both occupy the premises and one of you go in the nursing home, they cannot attach any type of lien to the property of the house until the second person is no longer living in the house. So that's kind of nice. But remember, if you're still married, the 6-month deal is still going to be put a lien on the property. It just means that they can't deal with enacting the lien until either one of them are no longer occupying the house. When there's 2 people and they no longer occupy the house, the government can come in and go ahead with the lien. So that's kind of important. We'll have another session on Medicaid, but those are the 2 critical areas. Make sure that if you're trying to avoid Medicaid, someone's starting to become ill, you want to make sure that the assets are not in your name within a 60-month period, and make sure that you understand what the spend down period is. It's 60 months, it's not 36 months. If you're a divorcee or a widow or single person, be careful making sure that you've got your house taken care of. Another thing we'll talk about is a life estate. A life estate is something that you can go to an attorney and have the house transferred to someone you want to leave as a beneficiary. And of course, once 60 months has went by, the house would be protected. Upon your death, the house would go to the person that you went to the life estate, but there'd be no court, no creditors, no divorces or coming back and taking the house. They continue to live in the house until both the husband and the wife are deceased.